Great. Okay, thank you all so much for joining us. We have an awesome second session in our B2B Crash Course. If you missed session number 1, the recording is available and I will send the link out to you all. Definitely recommend checking it out. In today's session, you're going to hear some exciting release information. I have also opened the Q&A, so if you have any questions, please ensure to submit them in the Q&A tab on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And I'm going to hand it over to Vijay and Kevin and Sarah. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Sabrina. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, for wherever you guys are joining us from. So in today's conversation, I have the pleasure of joining Kevin Kane from our solutions team that will be co-presenting this session with me to introduce you to one of the most exciting solution accelerator that we have coming that will support EDI order lifecycle management for Salesforce Order Management. And my name is Vijay Ganapathy, and I lead the strategy and execution for our B2B integration product portfolio at MuleSoft. Kevin, can you maybe give a quick introduction about yourself before we kick things off?
Sure, Vijay. I'd love to. My name is Kevin Kane. I'm the lead solution architect for the MuleSoft Industries Products and Solutions team. So I've been working with the solutions group producing MuleSoft accelerators for various industries, which you'll see one of today.
Awesome. So before we get started, so just wanted to flash this forward-looking safe harbor statement. That we may be talking about some of the upcoming features within the product and the platform. So please make any commercial decisions based on the capabilities that are available today. So with that out of our way, the agenda for today's session is going to be pretty simple. Just a refresher of what our B2B integration story with MuleSoft is. We have covered a lot of those aspects in the previous session, so we'll keep it light. And we will have Kevin go through a very deep dive demonstration of the upcoming EA Order Lifecycle Management Accelerator for Salesforce OMS, which unlocks a lot of the possibilities within the Anypoint platform and how customers can benefit from the best of the Anypoint platform as well as from the best of the Salesforce Commerce Cloud's order management offering. So to get us started with just a quick introduction to B2B and EDA standards for anybody that is not very familiar with some of these concepts that we'll be talking about in today's session. In a typical world or in a typical supply chain execution system, we have two kinds of organizations in any business-to-business relationship. So you see organizations on the left side that basically act as a buyer in the grand scheme of things, right? Whether it's a company like Walmart, we all walk into companies or retail stores like Walmart and Target and grab the favorite products and producers that we love. But then like Walmart and Target and such companies, they have to source those products that they sell on their retail outlets from one of the thousands of suppliers or sellers that we see on the right side of this equation. So it's not just about a retail and or consumer goods industry, but it could even be companies like Tesla or BMW that has to buy tires and components from companies like Bridgestone or Bosch. Or it can also be healthcare wholesalers like CVS or Walgreens that need to buy medicines and vaccines and medical devices from companies like Pfizer or Seqirus, for instance. So there is a constant exchange of information back and forth that basically completes the procurement and the order fulfillment process across these two types of organizations. At the same time, these products that they buy or sell, they have to be transported from between places, right? Whether it's the manufacturing facility of the supplier to the a warehouse of the buyer. So there is a constant need for moving things across the value chain. So all the hundreds of trucks that we see on a daily basis on the freeways, operated by companies like JB Hunt or Schneider or one of those cargo shipping companies. So they all play a major role in completing or completing the supply chain operations from an end-to-end standpoint. So business to business or EDI or electronic data interchange standards have been there for decades that enable the automation of a lot of these complex supply chain workflows like procure to pay or order to cash or warehouse management. And there are many different use cases that these standards unlock. So the focus for today's conversation is going to be more centered around how our platform and the upcoming solution accelerator helps organizations that basically sell their products, right? They need the capabilities to receive orders from different companies and efficiently fulfill and manage those order lifecycle. So that is going to be the crux of today's conversation. Before we get into the weeds of today's session, just some statistics that were released by Digital Commerce 360 a couple of weeks ago. EDI or electronic data interchange standards account for more than 75% or close to 75% of the total B2B orders in across several industries. So that's a huge number. And EDI continues to be the workhorse in facilitating the exchange of this B2B transactions, especially the order and shipment and invoice related transactions, enabling full end-to-end automation of these data exchanges between organizations. So that number continues to grow. And as you can see, there is trillions of dollars in play through EDI transactions. So that's a bigger number in the grand scheme of things. So just to introduce how Anypoint platform enables B2B integrations, like whether it's a supplier or a seller that needs to receive EDA orders from their customers, or if it's a customer or a retailer that needs to send outbound orders to their supplier ecosystem, or if it's a logistics company that needs to receive those EDA load tenders and shipment requests to transport some commodities between places. Organizations have been using the Anypoint platform extensively to modernize how their internal systems and applications are interconnected, right? Being in the MuleSoft ecosystem for a long time, I'm sure most of the audience in this session, they know the API-led connectivity approach and the composable enterprise application network that basically brings all of those internal systems and data sources together into what we call as a composable enterprise application network. And integration doesn't stop within the four walls of the enterprise, right? Most of the organizations, they have the need to integrate with their external business partner ecosystem to exchange those orders and invoices and plenty of other different business transactions at scale for their business operations. So that is where we have Anypoint Partner Manager coming in more as a gateway between the partner ecosystem and enterprises that enables faster partner onboarding through a low-code and configuration-driven experience. Being part of the Anypoint platform, you're able to connect with any system or any cloud-based systems or on-premise systems by leveraging one of the hundreds of built-in connectors that the Anypoint platform offers. And more importantly, Partner Manager also provides out-of-the-box visibility and tracking capabilities for those business transactions that constantly get exchanged between organizations. So with that introduction, just pivoting into how the Anypoint platform continues to evolve as an unified platform that enables sellers to basically support an omni-channel experience for their B2B customers, right? If we take the equation of the buyers and sellers, the sellers getting orders from a very diverse set of customer segments. Some of these larger big box retailers like Walmart and Home Depot, they naturally prefer sending these order information as EDI, Extral, or Edifact transactions. There is also a lot of startup and e-commerce companies that prefer to exchange order information in XML, JSON, or even CSV files that all come into play. At the same time, we also do have a segment of organizations that still are using paper-based transactions, like sending the purchase orders or invoices as PDF or image files, right? So if you're a seller that has the goal of expanding your customer network so that you can grow your revenue stream organically, you have to be in a position to support taking orders through different channels, right? You don't want to say no to a customer that could give you a very significant business if just because they want to send order information as a PDF file, for instance. So MuleSoft as an Anypoint platform continues to evolve with more and more capabilities added across different sub products within the platform. So with Partner Manager, as you've probably seen in the previous sessions, Partner Manager is purpose-built to handle EDI transactions, and it can also handle XMLs and JSONs and CSVs to process those transactions, apply dynamic transformations and validation rules, and deeply interconnect with your backend systems, whether it's order management platforms like Salesforce Order Management or ERPs like SAP or Oracle, or if we have the need to connect with warehouse management systems like Blue Yonder. So it is able to orchestrate a lot of those integrations, enabling a very consistent and unified experience of managing business transactions. With the upcoming MuleSoft IDP, which is going to be launched later this month, we are also able to extract information out of PDF-based purchase orders or invoices, or image-based purchase orders or invoices, and convert them using an AI-enabled mechanism and turn them into a computer-readable and processable message. And those messages can also be fed through Partner Manager and orchestrated to the downstream processes and applications. So end of the day, this basically provides a very centralized visibility and tracking capabilities of all the business documents, whether it's EDI or XML or JSON or PDF, it doesn't really matter. So we are able to process them all through a very consistent experience in a single platform. And with these transactions processing through Partner Manager, customers can also take advantage of standard features like searching for a particular order number or reprocessing a particular order if there is something that happened between in your backend system that requires an order or an invoice to be reprocessed back. You don't have to call your partners and have them resend or follow some manual processes to get those transactions reprocessed. So there is plenty of streamlining opportunities and the order of possibilities that the platform continues to unlock in enabling organizations to manage and be an omni-channel B2B order intake company. So with that introduction to where the product is and the platform is evolving, so just a quick recap of some of the innovations that we delivered through Anypoint Partner Manager in the past few months, and some of the exciting upcoming capabilities that are lined up for the coming months. So as you've probably heard in previous sessions, we launched support for CSV and delimited data file formats, and customers can now replay and reprocess transactions, not just from the UI, but also through platform API calls if you want to automate a lot of those manual processes involved in reprocessing any business transactions. And we also launched support for deploying Partner Manager runtime applications into Kubernetes-based clusters on AWS EKS. And we also very recently added support for handling SFTP identity key-based authentication for SFTP protocol, along with some significant improvements in how the certificate and key management happens within the product. We have plenty of new features that are lined up. Just to call out a couple of important ones that are lined up for the rest of the year. The one for OMS Accelerator, connecting EDI orders and managing the entire lifecycle of EDI orders. This is going to be the focus of today's conversation, and I'm excited to see things in action as Kevin walks us through with the demonstration. And we'll also be supporting Cloud App 2.0 as a deployment target later this year. So just before I hand it off to Kevin, right, just to wrap up what I have just shared, right, and a little bit of context to what Kevin is going to be demonstrating to all of us today. We have a fictional company called Mythical Supplies, right? Think of them as a manufacturer or a consumer goods company that has the need to receive orders from a very diverse set of customers. And we are taking a fictional company called Orange Tree, which will be Mythical Supplies customer, sending in EDI transactions. So we will see Orange Tree sending an EDI purchase order, and then it magically creating an order in Salesforce OMS. And we have a simulated process that kind of demonstrates how the order gets allocated, shipped, invoiced, and then gets paid for. So the entire life cycle of this order processing is something that we will see as Kevin walks through us with the demo. And while that is going to be the center focus for today's session, I just also wanted to call out that Partner Manager, as we have seen before, can not only process XML transactions, but it can also process artifact, XML, JSON, or CSV. And with the upcoming IDP, we will also be able to process PDF and image-based orders. So please be on the lookout for more demonstrations in the upcoming community sessions, where we will do a deep dive on how MuleSoft IDP and Partner Manager works together to streamline the automation of order and B2B automation, and more in the upcoming sessions. With that introduction, I will hand it over to Kevin to introduce us to the accelerator and take us through the rest of this presentation. Kevin, over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Vijay. If we could go to the next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
For those who aren't familiar with the MuleSoft accelerators, these are pre-built solutions to solve common use cases and business problems in various industries, including financial services, retail and consumer goods, manufacturing, as well as healthcare and life sciences. So these are a collection of reference architectures on how to solve these use cases using the MuleSoft platform, integration platform, as well as pre-built API specifications, full application implementations, and additional resources to help realize that use case. All accelerators are intended to be customized and extended upon by customers, but it gives you a starting point for implementing specific use cases. All MuleSoft customers with an Anypoint subscription have access to these resources on Anypoint Exchange, which you can see an image of there. So if you go to Exchange and search for MuleSoft Accelerator, you'll find landing pages for the different accelerators we have, as well as links to all the assets that are available for those accelerators. And the design of the accelerators are such that individual assets are intended to be reused across not only individual accelerators, but also on their own, independently of any accelerator assets. One example would be a DocuSign system API for creating an easier to use experience for submitting documents to be signed and getting notifications back. If we could go to the next slide, please. What we're working on now, which Vijay alluded to, is the MuleSoft Accelerator for OMS. This is an overview of the high-level architecture, and it shows how Anypoint Partner Manager is integrated as an EDI gateway, if you will, between the buyer, the Orange Tree purchaser in the scenario that Vijay described, as well as the MuleSoft integration platform. And as you can see, we're following our API-led architecture approach, where the endpoints of the Anypoint Partner Manager flows end up in the process layer to then interact with the system layer to create high-scale orders in Salesforce OMS by the high-scale orders API. We also listen for events on order status changes and updates to produce some of the other EDI messages that are involved in the overall lifecycle, such as the purchase order acknowledgement, shipment notice, invoices, and we also receive payments coming back for those invoices. So we'll show you a quick demonstration of that today. Next slide, please. So what I will show in short order is how the platform receives an incoming EDI purchase order, and what I just described routes it to the process API, which in turn passes it to the Salesforce OMS system API to interact with Salesforce OMS. And then once successful, the process API will post a message to a Slack channel incidentally, reusing an asset we already had for other use cases. Next slide, please. So with that, let me switch over to my display and I'll start walking through the actual use case. So this is the Partner Manager configuration homepage for an environment for the Mythical Supplies supplier. As VJ mentioned, the partner has been defined as Orange Tree, as one of the Mythical's partners, and they will be making the purchase. And here are the identifiers and endpoints that are involved in the different message flows that we'll see today. These endpoints we've created to be HTTPS inbound and outbound for ease of testing purposes. They can also be SFTP or FTP endpoints as well. So for Mythical Supplies, they have their partner identified and a bunch of endpoints created to send and receive different types of messages from their various channels. So we can see there's a receive from partners, which is where the message inbound 850 purchase order and 820 remittance messages will come in. Acknowledgements, invoices, 856 shipment notice will go back to that partner via the outbound channel. And then we have our internal APIs for processing inbound orders as well as payments. So for this processing, we have a number of the standard message types for inbound and outbound. And then we also have our own canonical format message types. So one thing to highlight about the overall architecture is everything is mapped to and from the canonical format that is used by Accelerator assets. So what do I mean by that? We have defined as part of the Accelerator solution, and I don't believe it perhaps gets enough mention, is a fairly complete canonical data model that is based loosely on the Salesforce Customer 360 data model. It originally started from a consortium called the Cloud Information Model, which is why you'll see references in the assets to the MuleSoft Cloud Information Model for MuleSoft Accelerators. But we've since are going through an upgrade of that to simplify the model and bring it closer in alignment with the model that's actually used in Salesforce Data Cloud. So these are the different reference mappings to pick out some reference data attributes, which I'll mention in a second, as well as the different schemas that are defined for these message types. So all of the model objects have schemas defined behind them, and they come as part of the Accelerator assets. Custom message attributes on flows are data elements that can be picked out of inbound messages that can be used to correlate activities across different messages within an overall lifecycle, which we'll see in a moment. So some of the ones we've defined here include the buyer email address of the purchaser, carrier tracking number for shipments, invoice amounts and numbers, as well as the actual order summary ID as it appears in Salesforce OMS. So these are all used in what we call message flows in Partner Manager, which is a defined sequence of events, a sequence of steps to receive a message, transform it according to a data mapping, and then publish the transform message to a target. So let's take a look at the 850 purchase order message flow. So as we mentioned, we're receiving this from Orange Tree via HTTP, our Orange Tree partner, who we've identified with these identifiers that have been defined and they're fully customizable. We're receiving it via the HTTP endpoint to Mythical Supplies. The source message is a standard X12 850 message of the 410 version, and we're choosing to send a functional acknowledgement. The maps are extremely important and the key of the entire message flow. And this is what takes the inbound EDI message and maps it to the canonical format I mentioned earlier to be sent downstream to our processing APIs. So this map is defined in for those who are familiar with MuleSoft, it's a data weave message map. And most of them are fairly straightforward. They map from the EDI transactions, X12 transaction sets to a canonical model. The shipment one gets a little bit hairy because of the way the HL loops have to be structured. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward, and they're fairly simple maps. And of course, fully customizable. We provide these maps as well, in addition to the other resources I mentioned. Once transformed, the message is sent to the target. In this case, it's our purchase order API to receive, our orders API to receive the incoming purchase order rather. And again, that's HTTPS. So let's take a look at actually submitting a purchase order to see how that works. We're going to use Postman for this rather than set up the buyer as an actual other organization, in part to illustrate how Postman can be used to randomize some of the data for testing purposes to actually construct these EDI messages. I know it looks kind of a little hairy, but really it's just because we're using randomization provided by the Postman itself. And yes, this collection is shipped as well. So we thought it was a good example to provide this, good example for how you can manipulate data for testing purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and send this message. And this posts it to Partner Manager, which immediately returns 202 accepted status because it processes it asynchronously. If we go back to Partner Manager and refresh our activity, it takes a moment to process through. There we go. So we see the 850 message has been delivered to the backend system. So let's take a look at what that message looked like on the inbound, and then we'll see what it looks like in Salesforce OMS. So we can see that the functional acknowledgement was sent back, and here's our source payload that got generated on the way in. Again, we're using some randomization, so you end up with interesting product names like Awesome Cotton Pants. Amazing Steel Tuna is another one that's one of my favorites. And I mentioned that it's converted to canonical format, and here's what that looks like. So this is the message that got sent to our process API. And again, all of our APIs from the process layer down use a canonical format, making it very easy to mix and match components and to swap out one for another. It's also very easy, thanks to the way the APIs are designed, for customers to come with their own canonical models and just simply swap those out as well. It's very, very straightforward. Okay, so that's what the message looked like and the actual transmission. Let's go to see what happened in Salesforce OMS. We can see the order purchase number here is 616-00095. That's one too many zeros. This is our account representing our partner in Salesforce OMS, and we have certain B2B EDI related custom fields that are configured to help this process work. Part of it is because a lot of these accounts are intended to be pre-set up for certain payment methods, certain delivery methods, and that. But we can use the predefined EDI sender code to look these up, and that's in fact what the system API does from the inbound message. Let's refresh our order summaries, and we can see that the new order summary has come in from the inbound purchase order. And if we look at the related tab of the account, and I was trying to avoid refreshing this. We can see that it's come in here as well. So let's take a look at what actually got created. So here we can see the high-level details corresponding to the order header. And this particular order had two addresses, shipping addresses attached to it. In Salesforce OMS terms, there are two separate order delivery groups. And they end up with two separate fulfillment orders, one for each delivery group, which ends up creating two shipping addresses because there are two different targets, as well as two separate invoices, one for each fulfillment order. And so we can take a look at one of these fulfillment orders. We can see an invoice has already been generated from it, and the status is fulfilled. So a note about this, for most customer implementations, they will have their own workflow around Salesforce OMS in terms of how order fulfillment happens and when it happens, when invoices get generated and recorded. So what we've done for the purposes of demonstration and for the accelerator itself is to simulate this through a separate process API, which handles this information, as well as a few Salesforce flows that have been created to simplify the testing and verification process to, for example, automatically generate invoices when the fulfillment orders have been created. Very simple to replace or to not include at all. The packaged accelerator assets will include a Salesforce deployment package that can be added to a Salesforce instance that will provision the actual flows as well as some of the custom fields that we use and other resources. And we can take a look at some of the invoices that have been generated as well, because these will eventually be mapped to the individual pages. If we go back to our activity, we should see the remaining messages here, unless it didn't get in, which of course always happens during a demo. Luckily, I have a previous one I can show. For some reason it doesn't want to show it. Let's go to 30 minutes and I'll show you a previous one that was done. Oh, it's just presenting them out of sequence. I apologize. So here is the 850 that came in. Here's the acknowledgement that went back as part of the process. And then, as I mentioned, the invoices, the fulfillment orders are getting generated automatically, and then the invoices get created as well. So the invoices went back along with the 856 shipment notice to the partner. And then we have the partner payment simulated so that once the invoices are received, an X12 820 payment message is automatically constructed and posted back to Partner Manager to be received by our process API again to record those payments in Salesforce OMS. And as we can see, if we look at the, let's go back to the order summary. And we should be able to see a couple of payments. So these are the payments that came in from the 820 message. So this particular payment was, I'm looking for the amount, captured was $218,000. If we go to Partner Manager, we can take a look at this message and what was sent to the orders process API. This one. And we can see that this amount was applied to that particular invoice, which is why it was tracked that way. So that's effectively a round trip view of the purchase order receipt, acknowledgement, invoice, shipments going back, shipment notice going back, as well as receiving payment. Things that you can do from here is to use some of the business fields to actually, if we go back to the activity screen, is to search on one of these attributes, and I'll take the purchase order number to see all the message transmissions associated with that. Usually, oh, wrong field. There. So this restricts the view to all the messages that were associated with that particular order number. And the transmission ID, if we look at one of these, you'll see this transmission ID. You can use this transition ID to search in Anypoint monitoring to find all the log messages that were produced, both from Partner Manager and from our own the Accelerator process APIs and system APIs that were produced through the entire life cycle of handling this message. I mentioned that all of these are these assets have been implemented fully to the API specs. They are considered production quality, but not necessarily production ready. By that, I mean that it is expected that customers will take the assets, use them as a starting point, customize them, extend them, modify them for their own particular purposes. They provide an excellent starting point for implementing your own use cases. I can share you one. I will need to switch to a different screen. For those of you familiar with Studio and MuleSoft applications, what I'm showing here is the Salesforce OMS system API, and specifically the Mule message flow related to handling the incoming purchase orders. And this is what the flow looks like. We receive it. We take an array, so it's possible to submit orders in batch. We make sure we are connected to Salesforce, and we look up the account, as I showed on the activity diagram earlier, and then we transform it to the high scale order API request format expected by Salesforce OMS. And so this transform is included with the assets. The high scale orders API is documented, so that's available. And so there's a full implementation of the API specification that you can see here, and I'll just bring it up fairly quickly. This follows our standard patterns for virtually all accelerators. So if you've used some of the accelerator assets before, this will look very, very familiar. Some of these can be stripped out if you want to simplify them or reduce the amount of messages or content in them. Again, you can take these, deploy them to your own Anypoint Exchange org, Design Center, import them into Design Center, and customize them as you see fit. So here we can see the inbound post for purchase orders, payments, as well as shipments for recording shipments back to Salesforce OMS. Just like to highlight a couple of things about these projects. The project structure, the format, the content is very consistent. It follows our design patterns for all accelerators. And you can see that the resources are separated between configuration files for different environments. So we provide templates for those, as well as all the individual transformation scripts that I mentioned. So here's the one for purchase order we were looking at earlier, which is the high scale order library transform. All of our assets also include MUnit test suites, right? Again, to use as a starting point. They're fairly minimal, but they do test most of the endpoints and the flows that are there. As well as, I'd like to highlight, I talked about the Postman collections. We generally include at least one Postman collection for testing the API itself. And in this case, for backend systems that have an API where we've done some discovery or found it useful to be able to hit the backend API request the backend API for different purposes and for discovery testing, as I mentioned, we include these as well. Most of them are configured to use environment variables, which you just import this template, assign your variables, and then the script should work as is. And of course, can be extended on from there. Okay, so that's a quick view into the contents of some of the system APIs that we have. And I think with that, we're available to answer questions and explore more items in detail if people wish to do so. Thank you. Back to you, Vijay and Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. I think there has been a good number of questions that have been coming through the Q&A panel that I've been trying to answer. I think we have answered some of the questions, and let's. I think, Kevin, one of the kind of interesting observation from Mohana was kind of when we searched for the PO number, the 856 was not showing, and there was a good catch. And I did answer that it's because we are still working on the 856 attributes with some of the changes that are still in flight. So they will be kind of addressed before the solution is launched later this month. Um, let's go and see if there are any questions that we can pick up and answer live.
So Raj has a question: is the map provided by MuleSoft standard content? BJ, I think that's a question for you.
Yeah, so Raj, so when we launch this later this month, it will include mapping examples for X12 4010 version. We do have plans to extend to have a similar mapping, which is going to be very low lift, to add examples for version 5010 and expand to Edifact standards as well in the coming months. So this is kind of going to be an constantly evolving offering where we will add more examples to the mapping libraries. But the backend, the process and system API is a great foundation, and that is not going to change much as we add more examples from an ADI standard support standpoint.
Couple of the questions that went on before that I can perhaps add a little bit of context to. Mohana asked if there was a way to generate some reports or alerts if there were any issues. I didn't mention it, but one of the features that we added, not feature rather, but resource that we added was a way to capture process exceptions in Salesforce OMS and log them to an object so that that object can be queried. I should have shown it actually. There is a view that we created in our instance that allows you to see any process exceptions that occurred. Is a report not at the moment, but there is actually a view that you can use.
Yeah, to extend to what Kevin just said, like if things there are situations where the incoming EDA transaction is invalid because it's missing certain values. So while you can look at the activity screen and filter for transactions based on processing status or acknowledgement status, there are also options available to call our tracking API to get the same information. So that is exactly what we are going to be covering in the next installment of this meetup series on Partner Manager in May, where we will be doing an in-depth walkthrough of how to leverage the platform tracking APIs to get alerts, to check for any AS2 or other certificates that are due to expire in the next 1 or 3 months, or whether it's checking for any outbound transactions that have not received an inbound acknowledgements within the stipulated time. So there's a lot of things that can be fully automated and customized to kind of generate reports and alerts using the tracking API that the product offers. So please join on the next session, and we'll cover those aspects in detail.
Vijay, could you please comment on what different types of connectors Partner Manager provides? I presume this means endpoints in terms
Correct.
of
Yeah, so we do support AS2, SFTP, FTP, and HTTPS. So you can also use API Manager to manage the HTTP endpoints that are configured and deployed in Partner Manager. But for any other connections, end of the day, Partner Manager can talk to any MuleSoft API through the standard HTTPS connection. So if you have a need to connect to, for example, in this use case is a classic example where we had to connect to Salesforce Order Management extensively. So Partner Manager translates the data and then calls the process API, which can basically leverage, or the system API can leverage any of the hundreds of connectors that the Anypoint platform offers. So it's more of the platform's versatility, even though Partner Manager may not support specific protocols out of the box. but there are plenty of ways in which you can connect to any system from Partner Manager.
There was a question about the data weave mappings, if they can be created in Anypoint Code Builder as opposed to Studio. The answer is yes, they can be. I just showed them in Studio because I had it open to show the Mule flow. But we actually develop most of our mapping scripts in the interactive learning environment that DataWeave provides. If you haven't seen it before, it's a fantastic tool for taking an input source, working on your script and seeing in real time what the output of that is. And very invaluable tool for helping develop these. And there's code completion and helpful tips and stuff as well.
Yeah, there is a question from Romeo. Like, if I check on details on a particular PO, yes. So I think that is part of the demonstration that Kevin walked us through, and I think Mohana made an interesting observation that the 856 was not showing because it was not configured with the custom attributes yet, and it will be addressed. But Romeo, to your question, yes, if you search for a particular PO number, Partner Manager is able to show all the related transactions from the incoming order to order acknowledgements, shipments, invoices, and payment remittances. So it's just a bit of configuration to define those attributes and where the PO number is present in each of those transaction structure. And that is all going to be part of the provided assets as part of this accelerator. There is a question from Michael. I think Kevin, it's about, can we do a session on accelerator common assets, right? I think probably that's definitely a session worth doing. Maybe I'll have you weigh in on that question, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a great question, Michael. Thank you. It definitely would be worth a session on that. We have created a video on getting started with MuleSoft Accelerators, which was released late last year. We plan more in that series, but I definitely think it's worth deep diving into a number of these assets, especially the canonical model, which tends to be controversial with some. We needed a model to use for ourselves, and we felt that this was, at the time, it was an open consortium that produced it. So we incorporate it, but we incorporate it in a way that is easy to be replaced. But definitely I used to work in the professional services side of the organization for many years, and I've seen a lot of customers struggle with defining data models because integration is all about data, right? Getting data from one place to another, transforming it, and defining those data models can be extremely difficult. So we felt it very valuable to provide one for customers that don't have one or would like to enrich their data models based on what we provide. As I mentioned, as part of this accelerator release, we're revamping our implementation of SIM to simplify it and bring it in closer alignment with the data model used in Data Cloud.
And there was also a question earlier, from Bill, that I think, Kevin, the object thing, that like the exception object in OMS, I think that addresses that question, right? So the question is more of, what if we receive an EDA order with a non-existent item number? And I think that framework captures it and makes it available for anybody to view.
Yes, and there are several levels of exception handling. What I described earlier about the process exceptions are exceptions that occur within Salesforce OMS itself, primarily because the handoff through the high-scale orders API is async. So what OMS does is it creates a pending order summary that is then picked up by a subsequent process asynchronously. And if an error occurs during that processing, that's what we capture and what you can view in there if the order doesn't get created. If the actual call to high scale fails, or the account can't be found, or some other error occurs within the integration layer, that will end up showing in Partner Manager as a failed attempt to deliver the message. And then, of course, all the applications, including the Partner Manager runtime templates, such as the HTTP endpoint, as well as the document processing service itself that handles the message transformation and routing. They're deployed to your your runtime manager Cloud Hub environment in Anypoint. So it's your own environment. You can take a look at the logs and search them as well, using Anypoint monitoring especially.
And any standard EDI message validation failures, they are captured, and you're able to access them through the tracking API call, or if you go into any failed transmission, you will be able to see why a particular transaction failed and which segment or data element constituted to a failure. And also the platform takes care of generating appropriate acknowledgement back to the customer so that they know that the transaction that they sent was rejected for whatever reason. And you can also update the validation rules if you choose to ignore some of those errors and take advantage of the replay capabilities to reprocess the transaction without having to contact your partner to resend transactions. So there is plenty of error handling and exception handling and reporting capabilities available throughout the end-to-end process implementation at various stages.
Do you want me to actually show that, Vijay? The X12 configuration?
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
So within Partner Manager, I didn't touch on it in too much detail, but there are also global endpoint settings for some of the different protocols and message validations. You can also set message validations at the partner level. So here we can see for the validation of X12 messages received from our Orange Tree partner, we can choose whether to send a TA1 or send a 997 by default. We can also control what validations are applied to incoming messages. We've left them at the recommended settings for production, which sometimes causes us some fun during development and testing. You can also require certain specific interchange control numbers. You can also change the character encoding, if you will. I should mention that the character encoding of all Accelerator assets and resources is UTF-8. And so for functional acknowledgements, you can choose where they go to, which endpoint for your partner. So we have it configured for our simulator process API, so we can actually make sure that they're coming.
And while you're there, Kevin, I just sent an A2P transaction with a long purchase order number. If you go to the activity page, for instance, you should
clear that.
I think you need to refresh that.
Yeah. 1 second.
Yeah. Or just filter by the failed status, the message processing status.
Okay. No, didn't fail.
It did. I can see it in my.
You can see it in yours. That's funny.
Yeah, I'm on the same environment. It's
at
okay.
It's like
yeah,
it's like I'm on a different content data network, sure. Right? Delivery network.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go and click the transmission ID here, like I just intentionally sent an A2P transaction with a really long PO number. So if you scroll all the way down, you will see that this transaction failed because the purchase order number in the BG03 data element was long. It was supposed to be 22 character according to the specification, but I did send a 37 character, some random number. So because like when Kevin showed the enable length validation was checked right in the validation rules, there are two ways in which you can address this. Like you can create a custom EDA schema if you want to really increase that value from 22 characters to, let's say, 100, because a lot of times these EDA standards were established back in 1970s, where all these orders were going into mainframes where space was a real constraint, right? So you can only have 80 characters in a screen in a line. So they came with like the PO number can be only 22 characters. But most organizations use kind of Salesforce OMS or SAP or other modern platforms that don't have such restrictions. So if you and your trading partner agrees that it is okay to increase the PO number length from 22 characters to a higher value. You can update your schema, or you can just disable that validation rule, which will basically apply to all data elements, which may or may not be good. So it doesn't apply to only specific data elements. So end of the day, so this validation rule was turned on, and the specification is the standard one where it states 22 characters the maximum length. But the BG03 segment or data element value on this data that we sent was too long. So, and the system captured it and flagged it as an error. If you scroll up and view the 997 here, Kevin, so here since the 997, it is important for Orange Tree to know that the order that they sent is not going to be shipped and delivered, right? It's important to communicate that. So that is where the functional acknowledgement comes into play. So if you look at the AK4 segment here, that clearly tells that, hey, this BG03 value was this, and it failed for whatever reason according to the external standard specification. So that way, Orange Tree knows that the order that they sent is never going to arrive in their store or in their warehouse, right? So all of these things are automated, and I think this, yeah, I think that covers, and all the information about the failures you can call the tracking API to get that. So that is going to be the focus for our next session in May to go through some examples of how customers can implement simple processes to consume the tracking API and connect to your preferred ITSM tooling to take any support actions on these validation or data processing failures.
One thing I thought I would show, because it came up earlier and we're back here, is the process exceptions. So what I call them processing exceptions, excuse me. That's the built-in processing exception view. What we've created is this pending order summary error listing. So this shows you some of the different types of errors that can occur and what the actual error message was for these. And if you go into the details, it doesn't provide a ton, but it at least gives you the external reference identifier, and that can be matched up back to the incoming 850.
Okay, and there is the question from Siddhi. Kevin, I think you can take that. It's about
I was just trying to answer that in between showing other things and that. See, I think the best thing to do is to check the documentation online. The high skill orders API is documented. There is some information about it. It's relatively new, but there is at least a schema there. I don't remember if it lists order errors, specific errors in that or not. It wouldn't be for high scale though. It would be for Salesforce OMS specifically.
And I think we have 2 minutes left, and there's a question from Bill asking where is unstructured message on the target roadmap. So technically, the MuleSoft IDP solution is going to be launched later this month. Of course, safe harbor statement still applies, but we're very close to launching that. So that basically enables extracting content out of documents like purchase orders and invoices from PDFs and image files using our AI-trained solution, and that information can be fed through Partner Manager. Like you have like some percentage of your customers sending orders through EDI, and some percentage of customers sending orders through XMLs and CSVs, and some through PDF. So the idea here is to streamline everything through a unified workflow, so that it makes the operational lives much easier to support orders coming through different channels. And I think we have just one more minute left, but I wanted to use that opportunity to kind of just splash some additional resources. So this is, I think there's plenty of questions around how the alerting and how people can get notified. So that is going to be the focus for our upcoming session in May 16th. Please be on the lookout for the registration link once it is kind of posted on the website. So we hope to address a lot of those questions with more hands-on examples in that session. And we are at time, and there are some additional links and resources that you can use. And this deck will also be posted on the Meetup site. And if there are any additional unanswered questions, we will try to probably send those answers one-on-one to whoever have asked those questions. And with that, we thank you all for joining us today. I we are walking away with some really useful information that will help in whatever you are doing in your day-to-day work. And we hope to see you all again in May in our next session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.